Hey everyone, welcome to the realistic backing track creation workshop. My name is Paul Tobey. Thank you all for joining me. I totally get that you have many other things you could be doing at this time. I certainly appreciate you joining me from all over the world. We have exactly 16 people registered, so I'm sure there will be a few others showing up momentarily. And I want to just thank you in advance for taking the time out of your busy day to spend a little bit of time with me. I certainly appreciate that. We're going to do introductions in a second. Here's what we're going to learn today. I'm going to go through step-by-step instructions of how I put backing tracks together, like the one you just heard. If you showed up and you watched the countdown, and I was playing Cantaloupe Island by Herbie Hancock. We're going to create backing tracks just like that. I'm going to walk you through the whole process. It is quite involved, but I've had a lot of people comment on Facebook and on my YouTube channel about how I go about that. So I'm literally going to bear all and walk you step by step through that. There is some software involved and some processes involved, but I know you're all smart people and you can totally follow along. I've also made some notes of software and things that you can use that's absolutely free. And I'm going to send that to you in an email. You'll get that email around 3 o'clock. I don't want anybody reading it during the workshop because, you get distracted and you're checking out software instead of hanging out with me, which is a lot more fun. How many of you would agree with that?
Yep.
Excellent. Thank you. So the only thing that I would ask is, because there's some technical musical stuff going on here, I'm going to actually take the backing track that we're going to make today, and I'm going to actually go upstairs and play a little bit on the piano. So I've got a lot of technical stuff going on here. The only thing that I would ask is if you absolutely can keep yourself muted until you're going to talk. That would be awesome, because with music going on, you never know. Zoom was never created for this, so we'll get by, I'm sure, and it'll be fine. So here's, before I get started, is it okay if I just tell you a little bit about myself? Oh, okay. Thank you. So I was a professional musician for many years, 23 to be exact. Made 8 albums, played in 17 different countries. And then when I turned 39, it kind of all went to hell. And I got tinnitus. I don't know if you know what that is. It's like a really loud ringing in the ears. Happens to a lot of musicians, especially when you have people like Terry Clark running ride cymbals in your ear for like 5 years straight. And it just kind of sent me in a tailspin, and then got depression and stuff like that. And I just literally left the music business, and I spent a couple of years trying to figure out what I wanted to do with the rest of my life. And I started a business, and that did really well. I was quite surprised at actually how well it did, because, when you're broke, when you're 39 and you actually don't start making money until you're, early 40s, you got a bit of catching up to do. How many of you'd agree with that? So I caught up, and now I actually just sold my house in Toronto. I'm moving to Niagara-on-the-Lake. And part of my semi-retirement plan, because I still have clients, I do business consulting for marketing and things like that, and digital marketing. And as a side, I decided that I was going to get back into the music business because frankly, my playing hasn't gotten a lot worse over the years. In fact, I think I'm quite a bit more musical than I was 20 years ago. And so my wife said, well, if you're going to get back into music, you're going to have to build up a new audience. So I'm like, well, how do I do that? And she said, well, you're going to have to start a YouTube channel. And I didn't know anything about YouTube, to be honest. All I knew was that some people were doing really well, but most people weren't. So I took some courses, and I watched about 1 billion videos on how to optimize videos and all that kind of stuff. And we started this YouTube channel about 6 months ago. And we posted 5 videos a week, many of them. How many of you watched any of those? Excellent. Thank you. I appreciate that, because it's a lot of work posting 5 music videos a week with, editing and all that kind of stuff and optimization. But like I said, it's going well, and we are very close to 1,000 subscribers. I think it was 917 today. We're growing by about 10 a day. And when we get to 1,000, apparently it's going to get a lot better for us, because now I can start to post links to other things like sheet music and all that stuff right in the video itself. Whereas before I couldn't do that. So when we get to 1,000, things are going to change a little bit. I'm allowed to do a lot more things than I can do now. So we can all have that to look forward to. But I wanted you to know, just from me to you, that this is kind of like my third life. I've had music as my first life for many years. Then I had business as my second life. And now I'm getting back into my third life as a musician. And part of that is going to be to mentor as many people as I can on just making great music and getting it out there. For example, I'm sure that many of you want your music heard, but you post something on YouTube and what happens? You get family and friends checking it out, but hardly anybody else. So I kind of figured out how to hack the YouTube algorithm and how to get people to watch. We're getting about 450 views a day on our YouTube channel. And out of that, we get only about 10 subscribers because, you know, people don't really want to subscribe unless they really want to subscribe. So it's really hard to get subscribers, but I can share some insights on those things on my YouTube channel in the time to come. So I just want to say, hey, this is my new life, my third life. Thank you for hanging out with me. I totally appreciate it. I'm just thrilled and excited to be here and share a little bit about some of the things I've learned. So how many of you are ready to get started? Excellent. Thank you. Can I just, if you could just unmute yourselves a little bit and just name and where you live would be awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm Alan from Stansted, Mount Fitchett.
Thank you.
In England.
England, okay, thank you.
Martin from Scotland, if you can hear me.
Scotland, okay, excellent, thank you. We've got somebody playing like, I don't know, it sounds like chipmunks.
That wouldn't be me. I'm Dennis from Canada.
And Dennis, why are you playing chipmunks?
Is that me?
I don't know. I have no idea.
Sorry, I don't think it's me.
And anyone else who'd like to jump in, go right ahead.
Hi, I'm Rob from Washington State.
Hey, Rob, how you doing? Okay, well, thank you for sharing. Let's get started. I'm going to show my screen and we're going to start. I would recommend, I'm recording this thing and I'm going to share it with those of you that showed up. I'm not going to reward the people that didn't. So I'll share it with those of you that showed up, but I really would recommend that you take a few notes, things that just sort of pop into your head. There's going to be a little quiz later and you're going to be marked on it. And if you score less than 80, you'll never be invited back. So my suggestion is, no, I'm just, just kidding. So, but taking notes is a good idea. And Martin, as you're sitting at the keyboard, just sort of play along. That would be really cool. He's got a notebook. Okay, awesome. All right, let me share my screen here. And the first thing that you're going to notice is notation. And the tune that we're going to work on today is Bernie's tune. Not sure how many of you are familiar with Bernie's tune, but it was written by Bernie Miller, popularized by Jerry Mulligan and Chet Baker on an album way back when. And it's a lovely tune. It's a tune that gets called quite a bit at jam sessions. So this is something that if you make a backing track, you can actually perform along with it. You actually don't have to make the backing track for Bernie's tune because luckily for you, I'm such a nice person. I'm going to share you the one that I'm going to make. So I'll send that to you in a link eventually. And you can practice along with Bernie's tune. So why am I showing you notation? Because to me, that's the easiest way to create a bass line. If you're trying to play a bass line into a digital audio workstation or into some recording software, it's very, very difficult to do that. It's a good idea just to notate it with whatever notation software you use. How many of you are familiar with Finale? Okay, a couple people. And then there's Sibelius and a whole bunch of others. There's a free one out there and it's called MuseScore. I want to write that down. It's called MuseScore. It's 100% free. You can also join the MuseScore group. I'm actually a member of MuseScore, which is kind of cool. And I post my sheet music there from time to time. But the goal with this is to write out a bass line. Now you can see that I've written out a bass line here, starting there, and I'm continuing it right over into the solo section where I've left it blank just to kind of show you the process of creating a bass line. So when we get to the solo section, typically in a swing tune like this, that's quarter note equals, what is it, 192? It's pretty up there. You're going to have to create what's called a walking bass line, and that means a quarter note for each beat. So the way that I do that is I choose something up here called speedy entry, and I click in the bar that I want to put my music, and I basically just start playing, and then I notate quarter notes with the number 4. So if I press a 4, it's sorry, that's eighth notes. 5 is quarter notes. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to walk this bass line up to start to get to B flat. So if B flat is our destination note, let's consider that that's the destination note. If I'm going to walk up to there, I'm going to use the scale or the key of the moment. So the key of the moment is D minor. What's the key signature? F. Thank you. 1 flat. So we're going to walk up the scale. I'm not sure if you can hear that. It's probably pretty faint. Can you hear this? Okay, so I'm going to walk up the scale like this. Just play a scale. Now that's a very simple illustration of how to play 2 bars of D minor. Just stick in the scale and play it like that. Then when you get to the B, we know that the next destination chord is E half diminished 7th, or E minor 7 flat 5. So what we might want to do is start on B flat. So we got to D, then we're going down to B flat. And then at the next bar, we're going to jump all the way down to B flat. And we're going to approach the next chord from a half step below. So when you're approaching note or chords, and you want to hit that chord root at the beginning of the next bar, you can approach it always. In very rare cases, you can't do this, but you can approach it always by a half step above or a half step below. So in this case, we're going to go a half step below and play E flat. And then when we get to the E half diminished 7th chord, we're actually going to spell the chord because we've only got 1 bar to do it. So let's go ahead and spell that chord. 1, 3, 5, and 7. And then when we get to the A7 chord, instead of starting on A, we're going to start on the C sharp, which is the 3rd of the chord. So when you're hitting chords that are not the ultimate destination, and by the way, in this phrase, what is the ultimate destination? It's that D minor chord at the end, which is the next bar. So we're going to use passing notes from the A7 chord in order to reach there. So let's just spell the chord like C sharp, or D flat, A, E, and then what did we say before? Half step below or above. Let's go half step down, and then we end up on D, just like that. And now what we're going to do is we're going to play the chord, root, 3rd, 5th, root, and then we're going to do the same thing as we did in the bar before, except now we've only got 2 beats per chord. So what we're going to do is hit the E, and we're going to approach the A7 from a half step above, and then approach the D from a half step above. So let's go back and review. The first bar here, which is this bar, I'm going to highlight it here. All we're doing is playing the scale for 2 bars. We get to B flat, we're going to play the scale down for 1 bar, then we're going to spell the chord and approach the next chord from a half step below. Then we're going to play the chord, and approach D minor from a half step above. And then we're going to play 2 notes for each chord. We're going to approach the A7 from a half step above and approach the next D minor from a half step above, just like that. Let's hear what that sounds like. Did you hear the ending part? We're going da dee da da da. Kind of cool to separate notes by distance sometime. Walking bass shouldn't always just be scales. You should be spelling the chords and you should be mixing it up a little bit, makes it a lot more interesting. Once we have this in place, and again, we're going to have all of this filled out. I'm not going to take the time to do the rest of it. If at some point anybody requests a masterclass on how to actually do bass lines, we'll get into it deeply. How many of you, other than bass players, have written your own bass lines before? Okay, sometimes. If you're going to create backing tracks, it's totally essential to know how to do this. In other words, bass lines are not random notes. They're just like improvising. Bass players are always improvising during solo sections because they're weighing everybody down, not weighing down, they're backing everybody up with their bass notes, but they're improvising at the same time. So it's a good idea at some point in your jazz life to learn how to do that consistently. Okay, there's one more thing that we need to do to this in order to make it more realistic. And this is something that almost everyone that I see create backing tracks from MIDI or from digital technology, this is the thing they miss. In jazz, it's very important for the bass to accent every other note. In other words, when you're swinging, you never swing on 1 and 3. You swing on 2 and 4. So it's like 1, 2, a 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. And they're always accenting 2 and 4. So how do we do that with the software? It's actually pretty easy. All we're going to do is we're going to go up here and we're going to choose an articulation. And it opens up an articulation selection. And we're going to choose the upside down hat, which is actually, I need to read what the number is or the letter. So it's an upside down hat and it has letter V. So all I need to do is click V and press the note like this. And then once I have every other note accented like that, I can actually copy that over to an extended by just copying the accidentals or the articulation versus everything else. So I'm going to edit the filter and I'm going to say, I'm not going to copy anything but articulations. And then I'm going to move that down here and boom, all of the notes didn't change, but articulations were added on every 2 and 4. So let's listen to that now and see the difference. It's there, but it's subtle. And that's what's important about this. You have to accent those notes, but you have to be subtle about it. So let's listen. Hear it start to swing? How many of you can hear it just start to swing a little bit? Yeah, and that's what, you know, when people comment on things for backing tracks, they're like, yeah, I don't know why that sounds so great. It's those little things that make all the difference. So remember to accent 2 and 4 when you're creating your bass lines or actually performing them into your digital audio workstations. So all we need to do with this now is we need to export this into a MIDI file. So what we're going to do is just go File, Export, and almost all notation software, including MuseScore and Sibelius, they'll all export out to MIDI files. And this is really important because you can't record over top of a Finale file. It's like, if I'm trying to record the piano, Finale is never going to cut it. You need a digital audio workstation in order to record any type of audio. So we're going to export it out to a MIDI file. We're going to call it Bernie's Tune Workshop Project MIDI file. And we're going to save all the instruments to separate tracks. Okay. And then we're just going to simply close Finale. Just like that. Now, before I move on, I totally get that, you know, that was a very quick introduction to writing bass lines, a quick introduction to Finale, but essentially you can use any notation software you want, and that's how you would construct bass lines. And that's how you would accent those bass lines. Are there any questions so far of anything that you just go, yeah, can you just talk about this part again?
Yeah, Paul, does MuseScore have those accents as well?
It does, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's just a different way of putting them on
Yeah.
top. So my
Okay.
suggestion is, when in doubt, Google it.
Okay, thanks.
Like, how do you put upside down hat accents? What are those called, by the way, all the musicians out there? When it's an upside down hat like that. Does anybody know what that's called?
No idea.
It's some kind of accent, but we all know what it means, right? It means basically play the note, not long, short, and accent it a little bit. Okay. Alan, does that answer your question? Excellent. Thank you. Are there any other questions? Okay. So the next really cool thing is we're going to launch now a Reaper project. Now, Reaper is my digital audio workstation. And for those of you that aren't totally technically minded, that's okay, because any digital audio workstation will do. It's just Reaper. And the reason why I like Reaper is it's 60 bucks. So at the end of the day, if you're looking for, I mean, everything that I've recorded on YouTube, Reaper. Everything that I've recorded in the last 6 months, Reaper. I don't use anything else. And the whole piece of software was $60. No add-ons, no extras, nothing. And if time to time I need a VST plugin for like a bass sound, which we're going to talk about, also free. And I'm going to show you how to get that as well. Can I get a, that's totally cool. Let's create a new project. And what we're going to do is we are going to insert a media file right into the project. So I'll give you a tour in just a second, but not until we put the media file in. So it's Bernie's Tune Workshop Project MIDI file. Open. And what you'll see is you can expand 3 MIDI tracks to new Reaper tracks. And why did it only give me 1? Let's do that one more time. There we go. So there's our 3 different tracks. The best thing you can do right now is to label them. So let's do this. This is, what was our tracks? The piano. This is bass down here. So they're labeled properly. Cool. Good enough. I usually put drums at the bottom. And now we have 3 tracks. And obviously, this is our timeline here going through. So the next thing we want to do is we want to apply a sound to these tracks. Not the piano track, because I'm going to perform the piano track live. What I need to do is apply a sound to the bass track, and then we'll go about the business of creating a drum track, because that's the really fun part. How many of you are having at least a little bit of fun so far? Excellent. Thank you. All right. So in this bass track, there's a little thing beside it called FX, or show FX window. So this is our FX window. And what we're going to do is we're going to add an instrument. And basically what an instrument is, it's a VST sampled sound from various instruments. In this particular case, we're going to use something called Aria Player. And Aria Player is a great plugin to play orchestral sounds. So there's the Reaper DAW software, then there's the Aria Player software, and then it hosts sounds. So even though I choose Aria, I haven't picked a sound yet. So we're going to add that to the track. And once we do that, the Aria Player pops up, and I've added an entire orchestra down here. And the best sound I've ever found is this, and everybody write this down. Even though I'm going to send it to you by email, just write it down because it's something you want to remember. It's called Virtual Playing Orchestra. How many of you have ever heard of Garritan Personal Orchestra? Okay, a couple people. Super pricey. Okay, if you want to buy orchestral sounds, you can buy Garritan. It's going to cost you an arm and a leg, maybe $1,000 to get all the sounds. Virtual Playing Orchestra is 100% free. I'm putting a link in the email that I'm sending you at around 3 o'clock. It's automatically going to come to you at 3 o'clock. And it contains a link to download Virtual Playing Orchestra. There's also a link on that site to download Aria Player, which you need to actually play it. Once you have it installed, and it's a little bit to install it. I'm going to not walk you through the installation process because, you know, it's involved and there's a YouTube video for that. What I am going to do is show you which bass sound that I use for all my videos. The most realistic bass sound I found is in the string section under Virtual Playing Orchestra, and it's called bass solo pizzicato. It's basically sampled, plucked strings, just like any bass player would do. And it's pretty much the most realistic one I've found. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to click on it and I'm going to drag it up here to channel 1, which says empty right now. So I'm just going to drag it there and you'll see it populate that just like that. And then what it does, and I love this about the software, is it now shows us on the keyboard what our range is. Now, of course, bass players can play out of this range, but the problem is the software will not. So if I wanted to play a bass note like way up here in like the C6 or C7 area, it's not going to do it because that's not a normal range for a sampled bass, and samples just sound really crappy up there anyway. But I'm going to play the keyboard and let me know what you think the sound is. Can you hear that? You can't hear that, no? Okay.
No, can't hear.
Give me 1 second. Can you hear that?
Now we can.
Okay, so what it's doing is I'm not playing the keyboard anymore. I just set the output sound from the Reaper software to go to the right source so that it picks it up by Zoom. Okay. So now what it's going to do is it's literally going to play this bass line. Now, if you've ever seen what MIDI looks like, I'm going to click on that bass line and it's going to open up all of the MIDI things for this. And what you'll notice is when we get to the solo section, look what it did. What did it do? Do you remember how we did that? Remember the accents that we put on the notes? When it imported the MIDI, it actually made every other note louder. And I'm just going to play that section for you like this. Now, why is it slow? And the answer is down here in the right-hand corner, we have to adjust the speed to the same speed that we want it to be. So I'm going to do 192 beats per minute down here. Can you all see where that is? This area right here? Okay. Let me know if you can't see something and I'll grab something to write with and I'll do that. Okay, let's play it again. So that's literally like 1A section. We could definitely go and record the rest of it, but we're not going to spend time doing that. I've done that prior to this, so I actually have a full version of that. Okay, now the fun part. Okay, wait, before I go on, any questions about getting that bass sound into Reaper or into any digital audio workstation? And what was the amazing bass sound that we're using? Bass solo pizzicato from Virtual Playing Orchestra. Awesome. Thank you. Any questions? Okay. Now we're going to do something really super cool. We're going to highlight the entire drum track, which was brought in from Finale, and we're going to delete it. Gone. Why? Because you're never going to create a realistic drum track from any digital software. It's very, very difficult to do. I've had to do it recently for a tune in 9/8 time. In fact, I I created the entire drum track from scratch for Jesu Joy of Man's Desiring. Did anyone see that new video in YouTube recently? Yeah, was that cool? That was that drum track was created literally like note by note using this, and I'll show you what it is, but it's really out there. So we have to add something called a VST plugin called Resamplematic 5000. And then we have to import each note of the scale one by one. So in other words, if the hi-hat is a D sharp, we have to create an entire VST plugin just for that one note. And then we have to do it for every single thing. So I had like 10 Resamplematic single notes in here. And then I had to go in and create a MIDI file and basically put those notes in one by one. Can anyone say not fun at all? And you know, the reason for that is because nobody decided to make a drum loop for 9/8 time straight ahead time. So when you run into situations like that, you have to improvise, which we're all familiar with as jazz musicians. Okay, so this is the really fun part for me. What I like to do, and the most realistic thing that you can do, and by the way, this is the file that I'm going to send you with all the links that I'm going to share with you. So we're going to go to YouTube, and I love YouTube for this. And by the way, people started asking me for my backing tracks recently, so I've started separating them out from the file and adding them separately in the Jazzmentl store. So if anybody's interested in those, you can go check those out. But I needed drum. So what you're going to do is you're going to Google very closely to what it is you're looking for. And you have to be very specific when you do this. Otherwise, you're going to get like a billion searches that don't make any sense. So the first thing is, what type of music is it? It's swing. You can't put jazz. Jazz is not, it's not a type of rhythm. Jazz is a type of music. So if you put jazz, you're going to get all kinds of weird results. So in this case, it's swing. We want drums. We want a loop or some type of backing track. You could put the word backing track if loop doesn't work, but I think loop usually works pretty well. And then put in the speed that you're looking for. In my case, it's 192. Now, I would suggest, and I've done this before many times, is you round it off to the lowest one if it's 5 or less, and then round it off to the highest number, to the 10 if it's 5 or more. I'm not sure if that made sense, but basically 192 resolves to 190. Because most of these guys who created these loops didn't make 192, 193, 194, 195. They made 120, 140, 150, 160. You get the idea, right? So kind of round it off. And then just put BPM, just like that. Swing drums BPM. Enter. And now you can see there's actually quite a few of them that have swing drums backing track 190. Okay, love these guys for doing this work. And by the way, I borrowed backing tracks from Hank Jan, who's in today's seminar, to do Spain. I took one of his conga and bongo backing tracks, and I made Spain out of it. How many of you know the tune Spain by Chick Corea? Yeah. So thanks, Hank Jan. I really appreciate that. I gave you credit in the video, and it's very popular. On MuseScore, by the way, you should know that that recording has, oh, I don't want to talk through my hat here. Give me a second. It had 79 votes for that piece of music, which, by the way, is a lot when you consider MuseScore. Most things are, 3 or 4. To get 79, I think it's all due to Hank Jan. So thanks so much for that. I appreciate it. Definitely different. Nobody ever played Spain with bongos before. Anyway, so here we are. And what you need to do now is just ignore the ad at the top, because that's not specific. And let's just go play them. So what we're listening for is a couple of things. Let's make a list of things we're listening for. Number one Is it actually a real drummer? That's number one. Number two, are there fills? You want fills because that's what makes the drum track realistic. If all it is just straight time, it's going to sound like crap. Okay. Especially if you're doing recording. And the third thing you're looking for is musicality. Is this person who's playing this actually good? And I've had, I played with Terry Clark for 3 years. He was voted the 5th best drummer in the world by Downbeat magazine. I know what a good drummer sounds like. Okay. So when I listen to it, I'm listening for guys like Terry Clark. And if they sound even remotely close to that, I'm going to choose that track. So let's just go listen to this one. Now we're going to hear advertising probably. Oh, no. Okay, to me, that ticks every box except one. Which box doesn't it tick? I can't hear you if you're muted. So if you want to unmute and answer the question, which box did it not tick?
Musicality.
Absolutely, bang on. Really, really, average drummer. Not sure how long this person's been playing. I mean, obviously the time is good, but it doesn't really sound like a good drummer. So let's go back and let's click the next one.
If you don't smoke, don't start. If you smoke, quit. If you don't quit, change. Unsmoke Canada.
This is the only challenge with this. All right, here we go. Ah, right away I can tell. Good drummer. Hear the fills? You don't want too many. You just want enough to make it sound like a real drummer. Okay. We don't have to look any further. We've found our drummer in just 2 shots. Now, it may take you 5 or 6, sometimes even 10. It depends on what style you're looking for and what speed. But basically, we found our drummer. Now, a lot of people are like, well, what do I do with it now? It's in YouTube. How do I get it? How do I actually use it? I see some heads nodding. It's like, how do I grab that track? And here's the answer. We're going to use a piece of software called OBS Studio. I'm going to show it on my screen here. And I'm putting a link in the download file that I'm going to send you. And essentially what OBS, it's a virtual studio for recording video. And it allows you to capture things like webcams, screen capture. Right now, I'm recording this session on OBS Studio. You can see over here on the right, it says stop recording. I'm actually recording this session. So I get good audio. And you can see my audio input capture is working from my microphone because Zoom doesn't always record things very well. But what you can do with Zoom is you can actually choose a audio input capture for your sound. So in other words, if I play this now and I look at Zoom, why is it not playing? Oh, it's muted. Here we go. Take a look at Zoom. Do you see the audio output capture? So what it's doing is it's capturing the audio from my sound card. Just a basic sound card. If you go down here in the right-hand corner and you look at, I'm not wearing headphones, I'm just using the system audio. If you look at the audio out, I'm using the speakers. Just a Realtek high definition audio. And all I need to do in Zoom is capture that. So if I look at the audio output capture and I take a look at properties, you can see it's capturing the speaker's Realtek high definition audio. Now you can capture any audio source you want, but in this particular case, that's the audio source that's playing that drum track. And then all I need to do is reverse the track for this to 0. Just press 0 and it goes back to the beginning. And then hit record. and it'll record. Now you have to do it in real time. You have to wait out the entire track, which in this case is probably like 5 minutes. Yeah, it's like 5 minutes, 28 seconds. We're not going to spend time recording the whole thing because I did it ahead of time. Once you have it in OBS, here's the problem. OBS doesn't capture audio as audio. It captures it as an MP4 file, which we all know is what? It's video. So now that we have a video file, how do we use that in Reaper? Because at Reaper, if you try to put an MP4 file into Reaper, it won't work. You can only put an MP3 file. So we need to convert the MP4 file to MP3. Good news. There's a free piece of software that you can download that'll do that. It's called VLC Media Player. Again, I put a link to where the download link is, so you can go grab that. So if you go to Media and you go Convert, all you have to do is add the file, and it's somewhere on the computer, wherever. Let's choose an MP4 file there. That's got audio on it. And then convert and save, and then choose audio MP3, choose the destination file and save, and it cuts out all the video and creates an MP3 file. Can I get a big hand for VLC Music? VLC Media Player. Totally free. Yes, sir.
Did you know that in Windows, Sound Recorder does the same?
I did not know that.
And it records it as a WAV file, and
Okay.
it skips about 3 of these steps.
Perfect. Everybody write that down.
I'm going to make a suggestion too.
Go. Yeah, absolutely. Go.
Okay, remember this? It's called Any Video Recorder.
What's it called?
Any Video Recorder.
Any video recorder, and it just captures audio?
It's free.
Okay.
And so it will allow you to paste the link from YouTube and convert it to any format you want. Video, audio, whatever.
Just paste
Yes.
the link.
Yes, but beware of viruses.
I've been using it for 3 years. I've never had a problem with it.
Some of those have included some nasty viruses.
Oh, you're kidding. Okay.
All right. Well, virus or no, I mean, obviously, if we have good software to take care of viruses, maybe it's okay. But so we have 2 suggestions. We have any video recorder, and the other was Rob?
Sound recorder is built into your Windows.
Sound recorder from Windows 10. Okay. Excellent. Thank you for the suggestions.
Paul,
I guess I just got
correction
so.
on that.
I'm sorry, what?
Just a correction. It was any video converter. Did you get that?
Any video recorder.
Converter.
Oh, converter. Any video converter. Okay, got it.
Yeah, my bad.
Sorry, there was background noise. I think it's Hank Jan. He sounds like a chipmunk when he talks. So I'm not sure exactly what that is. Okay, so now that we've converted it to an MP3, the really cool thing about this is you can save it into a particular area of your workstation. And in my case, I keep a sound folder with all of these files in it. So I need to view Media Explorer here. And now that I'm on Media Explorer, I can, navigate a little bit, and you can see I've got 5/4 drum loops, cool blues, summertime, swing drums, 120, up-tempo swing drums, whatever. And I also have the one that I recorded earlier today called Swing Drum Loop 192 BPM, exactly what we're looking for. And all we need to do is click that and drag that into the timeline, just like this. Okay. Once it's in there, there's a problem. And this is where you're going to have to use a little bit of finesse, because the drummers, when they play, it may be a little bit off by a second. So it's not going to line up properly, especially if it doesn't start right on one and if they don't keep good time. But essentially, you would make the track a little bit bigger so you can see the audio. And let's get rid of the Media Explorer down here, and also get rid of that so we can see the whole thing, just like this. So you can see right away, it's not recorded that loudly, but there it is. And what you need to do is you need to start zooming in on the track. And let's make it solo so we can hear it. And we're going to cut it, and we have to take off this snap enabled, and we have to cut it just right where it starts. Like that. And click S like that. So it cuts off that section. And then this part would start the tune over here like this. So let's just play that. Now, one way to tell if it's actually lined up properly is to play it with the click track. So up here in the left-hand corner, there's a click track metronome. So basically, if you click that on, and then you play the track with the metronome, okay, so here's what I can tell right away is like, as you're looking at it, these things need to be exactly lined up with the bar. So what you would do is in the beginning, you would just basically cut that out. And then again, it's going to take a little bit of finessing, but you would press the shift key, or sorry, the alt key, and you get with this little hand. And what it does is it makes the track bigger or smaller. So it's literally like slowing down the track or speeding it up. And then what you would do is you would align it, those offbeats, to the offbeats that you're seeing, get that straight, and then go back and check it. So it gets closer and closer. And then as you do it, you basically expand the track and check it further down the line. Because when you're making a small part of the track bigger or smaller or longer or shorter, it might not necessarily apply to something that's at the end of the track. So it takes a little bit of finesse to get this going. What I'm going to do right now is I'm going to open up a project that already has this completed. So let's take a look at the project that I want to open, and that is recent, I guess. Let's take a look at recent projects. So there's nothing different about this than what you saw before, except the fact that the bass track is now up here, and we're just going to move it down just above the drums. So now we've got bass and drums. This is labeled improperly, unless that's actually the bass line. Now you can't really listen to that and go, that's crap. It's a good sound, especially when you've got the bass line written out playing along with the melody. There's a fill coming up. So you can see right now it's smack dab in the middle of the solo section, which is there. And then, actually, this is the bass line. And then what happens is it gets to the end, and then you'll see a couple of interesting things. You'll see me divide the bass track or the drum track up into little sections. So what I did was I'm coming to the end of the tune, and the loop is still going. So what I want to do is I want to cut little sections out of it, like a ride cymbal or a crash or something like that, to signify that we've got some kind of ending here. Let's just quickly listen to the end. We'll play it one more time. It's kind of like what drummers would do. Drummers, it's interesting. When I used to play with Terry Clark a lot, he would continue to play after the end of the piece. And that's why you've got that one sort of eighth note after the final note, because you can see the bass note here is playing this one long tone on the beginning of the beat, but then the drums play right after it. Let me just play that bar. Everybody with me? So this is where when people comment on your tracks, is because you've gone the extra mile and you've actually, not just thrown a drum loop down in some old willy-nilly fashion, you've kind of arranged it a little bit. The only other thing that I wanted to show you now is, because we're going to perform this with an actual piano, I have to put a click source in to know where to start. So right here, I've got a click source in here. I'm going to take it out. I'm going to highlight those two bars, and I'm going to just go up here to insert click source. And what it does is it just gives me one of these. Otherwise, if I'm recording, I have no idea where to start. So it's always a good idea to give yourself 2 bars, not necessarily if it's a ballad, but give yourself a couple of bars, click track, in order to where to start recording, especially if you're playing an acoustic instrument and you're not playing Midi. The only other thing we need to do now is we need to just transfer this to the other computer where the piano is, and there we can go ahead and do a little bit of performance with this click track that we've just created. And that's upstairs. So I'm going to have to run there in a second. And I'll just kind of show you my setup, and we'll do a little bit of talking. The only problem is that there's so much audio going on around the piano, and there's like 3 computers working. I'm not going to be able to hear you talk. So if you have any questions right now about any of this, and again, I'm going to send you all the video recordings so you can kind of go through this step by step. There's probably going to be little things you want to know. Hey, here's my email address. Just send me an email and say, Paul, I'm struggling with this one section, or just go to any one of my YouTube videos and ask the question there. That's probably the better place to ask it, because we're monitoring that all the time. Ask the question and I'll see if I can help you. What I'll do if you post it on YouTube is I'll probably make a video out of that specific question. So you say, well, Paul, I'm struggling with getting my drum track aligned with my digital audio workstation, or Paul, I'm having trouble with getting my audio set up working so that I can hear the backing track while I'm performing and recording. How do you go about that? Let me actually answer a bit of that question. So what I do is I actually record using Reaper. So what I would do is I would create a new track just like this, call it piano or acoustic piano, or in my case, E-Bach, which is my German concert brand. And then on the inputs, when you record, so I'm going to arm the recording. Sorry, you're going to hear echo. I'll turn it off. You would actually, in that little section, and you can only see it when the recording button is on, and any input microphones into the system. For example, I put real Rode microphones into a interface, a MIDI interface. So it's basically taking the audio inputs and then converting it to a digital signal and going right into Reaper. So when I get it into Reaper, I have to choose the audio input. Now, you can't see it here because this is not my piano workstation. This is my office workstation, which is downstairs in my home. Okay, so if you want to record directly into Reaper, All you have to do is arm the track and then hit record down here at the bottom. There's a record button. And now it's recording the audio. Right now it's just recording the talk. Everybody get that? And the reason why I love that is because I rarely play things perfectly. How many of you just never have a problem with that? Played perfect every time, always on the beat, no mistakes, nothing. I'm not like that. I take a few times, especially during solo sections. I might take a couple of runs at it. And that's what's great about this, because what you can do here is, let's say you start your solo section like this, and I love Reaper for this. I can actually highlight this solo section like that. And then down here at the bottom, it goes record mode time selection auto punch. So what it's going to do is it's going to punch in right there at that point when that's armed like that. So watch what happens. I'm going to back it up, give myself a few bars to listen to it, and then it's going to punch in. Watch this. Not recording. Recording. How cool is that? Honestly, when I was in the music business, we never had toys like this. It was never like this when I left the music business. I'm having so much fun with this technology. It makes my head just happy, and I'm a happy person because, you know, I can make really good quality recordings at home without spending $1,000 a day at a studio, which I used to do all the time. So the recording gear and the whole systems have come a long way. How many of you can see that? Okay, a couple things before I go play for you, and I really want to do this. I want to take Bernie's tune and just kind of perform it for you. Anybody going to stick around for that? It's only like 3 minutes long, so we have time. Right now we have like 4 minutes left in our hour.
Thank you,
And
Paul.
that's how to make a backing track. How did it sound?
Lovely.
Good. It's not always easy getting decent sound into Zoom. How many of you would agree with that?
Yeah.
I never use Zoom for sound at all, only for video.
Yeah, it's not the easiest thing to do, let me tell you. There's a bunch of hoops to follow. You have to use like voice meter and OBS, and it's just this whole mix of things, because in order to get an acoustic piano into Zoom, it's just wrought with challenges. So I've been working on it for about a year now. Actually, I gave a Christmas concert last year online. We had about 300 people, and the sound was iffy at best, but I think it's getting better. So I'm working on it. All right, so you're going to get an email from me if you haven't got one already. I want to thank you for your time and hanging out with me today. That's basically my process for creating these backing tracks, and I hope you learned something from it. How many of you learned at least one thing you didn't know before you came here?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, good. Okay, thanks everyone for your time. Have yourselves a great day. I look
Thanks,
forward to
Paul.
seeing you in the next one.
Thanks, Paul.
Cheers, you're welcome.